One of the highest anticipated videos on all of YouTube on what was once the hottest vehicle on the auto market.
Today we put that anticipation to rest as we talk about our 36,000 miles that we have put on our Ford Bronco Wildtrak. We're gonna put it up in the air. We're gonna see what all is leaking. We're gonna talk about all the repair and maintenance issues we've had over the 36,000 miles we've owned this vehicle, and ultimately, if you should own this vehicle outside of warranty.
Hello everyone and welcome to Performance on Wheels. My name is Todd. My son Austin and I, we make all sorts of videos on all sorts of different cars. We also have all sorts of Bronco content. That's because we have owned multiple Broncos. We have reviewed multiple Broncos. We have done comparison videos with Broncos. And now we unpack what everyone wants to know. Should you sell this vehicle before it is out of warranty, or should you buy a used Bronco?
I should bring up any of the accessories that are fitted to this specific Bronco. I'm gonna have links to down in the description below. Front bumper, back bumper, some interior accessories that we recommend, these lights across the grille. All of that is listed down below. If you guys would be willing to check some of those out, it does slightly support our channel. We would greatly appreciate that.
Talking about those accessories quick though, Austin, is like, that's what's fun about the Bronco as well as the Wrangler. I'm gonna throw that in there quick, is you can make it your own. You can throw some different accessories or customizations, let it stand out from the crowd a little bit, which is cool.
And they're relatively easy to do on both platforms.
Yeah, that's really cool. And in late 2022 is when we bought this Wildtrak. It's a 23 model year, so it's a Wildtrak 2.7 auto 10 speed. And we did have some issues right out of the gate. We bought this with an option of having a hard top and a soft top, which was a pretty expensive option. It was a couple grand if I recall correctly. And we decided we were never going to use that soft top, so we actually listed it for sale. We sold it brand new, still wrapped up, had a little pallet and everything. And what we found is, I got a message a few days later that all of the parts that came with that soft top from the factory were for the driver's side.
Yep, two sets of the driver's side.
Right, so they excluded the sets from the passenger side. Just kind of a funny story leading into the video and some of the other issues we've had. The only thing that has taken this 36,000 mile Bronco into the shop so far, we took it in pretty early on with some sync issues that we wanted the screen reset. It was flaking out a little bit.
Constant app issues.
Yep, but essentially over-the-air updates is what corrected that. The only other issue we had is we had a blown B&O speaker directly behind the driver's seat. So that were the only issues that has brought this vehicle into the dealer outside of oil changes. We have been changing the oil on this vehicle and rotating the tires at 5,000 or less miles through that 36,000 mile ownership. So,
and I want to bring up something about those tire rotations. These are still the original Wildtrak tires that you would get on any Sasquatch package. We still have 8/32 of tread on all four corners on these tires, which is super impressive. That's 35,800 miles, and it still looks like they're halfway through their tread life. So that's genuinely impressive.
So take that into mind. If you're buying a used one, or you're buying one that needs tires, how long are my tires going to last?
Yeah, I mean, they're not cheap tires, but they do last.
Right, and this is a vehicle that is driven very conservatively. We could call this the mall crawler with very light off-roading. 19.3 miles per gallon is the average that we see in the summertime in the Wildtrak with those 35-inch tires. And when the wintertime comes around, and I think this is primarily between the auto starts or the remote start as well as the heated seats. I can see the power drain with those heated seats for sure. We see like high 17. I did see a slight decrease, maybe about a half a mile per gallon when we put the heavier bumpers on, but very minimal in that regard.
That's always using 87 octane as well.
Right.
We're not using any premium inside of this Bronco. I have heard that according to forums, apparently it bumps up the power a hair and it notices something in the system if you use 93 or 91, whatever. But this has only had 87 in it its whole life, and that's what we're getting for miles per gallon.
That's an excellent point to bring up, and the fact that we're getting 19.3 as an average mile per gallon, that's going to tell you, along with the tire tread, that this vehicle is driven extremely conservatively by my wife as her daily. So we have a lot of roads that are the optimum driving at 55 miles an hour, slow accelerating, easy braking. She is not an aggressive driver at all.
And when we talk about brakes, the front pads are around 10 millimeters still, and the backs are around 8 millimeters. So tons of brake life left as well. Tons of life left in those pads and rotors. Could probably easily double our miles on those.
Yeah, the 2.7 liter engine when they first came out did have a significant failure That's been resolved. We haven't had any major engine failures. We do have something related to the engine we're going to bring up in just a little bit that we're hoping is going to be covered under warranty, so stick around for that. But we haven't seen a lot of the other common items. The top, I was actually hoping to find some of the failures in the hard top, some little cracks. I'm going to point out a few things, but I don't think it's enough to get any sort of warranty repair.
And they don't show up on camera, so we're not even able to show you guys. It looks like there's a couple of small stress cracks, and there's some weird, like, I don't know what you want to call it.
Almost fabric.
Yeah, like fabric coming out between like the back crease. It looks like this on both sides. No, it's not a towel. We've never used a towel to wipe this off, but it looks like it's coming from the inside of the top. We're going to bring that up to Ford, and we'll bring that up in a future video when we actually bring this into the dealership and try to get the items that we talk about later addressed.
The interior is held up very well. The seats are in excellent condition. There's no like extreme wear points I'm noticing, so that's really good to note if you're buying a used one, that a Wildtrak during this video with 36,000 miles in daily use essentially is holding up really well. The seats, although in our video comparing the Wildtrak to the Badlands, we like the marine grade vinyl seats.
I think those are way cooler in my opinion, yeah.
But the ones in the Wildtrak, although it's still artificial or man-made, leatherette, they're holding up very well, so that is something important to note as well as you're shopping or thinking about getting rid of your Wildtrak. The other things, Austin, they're just so minuscule. Let's just show you guys.
Drivability wise, there's a couple of things to bring up, but first let's go ahead and put this on our lift and put it up in the air to see everything that's going on in the bottom half of this Wildtrak. We just wanted to give this a really good look over and examine it before we bring it to the dealer and see what exactly they will all address. As we lifted it up in the air, inspecting over the entire back end of this Bronco, we noticed honestly nothing. The back end looks very, very clean. The whole back of the solid axle looks relatively new still, which is impressive. Very minor surface rust, going through 2 Minnesota winters already, which is pretty heavy on the salt use if they're not familiar with this state. As we moved our way a little bit further forward, it still stayed the same, except for when we got to the transfer case. The transfer case output seal going to the rear diff has a ever so slight seep. Very small amount of fluid is located on the output shaft seal, so we're going to go ahead and see if Ford will go ahead and address that. Of course, it's nothing major by any means, but anything that's leaking, of course, we want to get addressed because it'll only continue to get worse over time. As we move our way a little bit forward, the bottom of the 10-speed transmission appears to be completely dry. Looks very clean under there, still looks brand new. A little bit further than that forward, I inspected the bottom of the plastic oil pan that is used on the Ford Bronco, which is, of course, a plastic oil pan is used across a variety of Ford products. And in the top corner, it appears that we have starting to be a drip leak in the top corner of that oil pan. So they're going to go ahead and have to drop the oil pan and reseal that. I don't think we will have any issue whatsoever getting that covered by Ford because you can visibly tell that it is starting to drip.
Love it.
I went ahead and inspected the turbos on both sides. I tried my best to show this on camera, but it was relatively hard to do. I don't see anything. Both of them look completely dry. I see no oil on the bottom of the turbos. We haven't had any issues with boost or anything like that, so everything with the turbos seems to be good. After we went ahead and left the bottom half of the vehicle, I inspected under the hood to where we saw some discoloration in the plastic pipe that is running into the throttle body. This appears to be a large amount of discoloration in my opinion, and it also kind of looks like where the mass airflow sensor actually runs into there, or I believe this is the mass airflow sensor. I guess I didn't look at it super close, but it looked like it was actually starting to melt a little bit. So this pipe obviously gets very hot. I'm very curious why they used a plastic pipe for this. We might bring this up to Ford as well and see if this is something that they will address. Other than that, it looked very clean on the underside of this vehicle.
Did you bring up the power steering pump or the power?
Oh, no, I didn't. The power steering rack also had the ever so slightest small amount of seepage.
You better believe I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, we'll see if Ford covers that, but I highly doubt it. That would be a full steering rack replacement. That is not a fixable seal.
Let's go.
So we'll see if Ford does anything about that, but I highly doubt it with how little fluid is coming out of it. But it is notable that we should be bringing it up. And the Wildtrak does have the Raptor steering rack. So if you're looking at a different trim of Wildtrak, this might not, or a different trim of Bronco, this might not be an issue, but just something that we did notice on this one. I did shake down the suspension on all 4 corners. They appear to be 100% solid. And yeah, I think that's everything that was noted on the underside of the Bronco.
Dry, no rips. Suspension looks great, so that's really good to hear. I will go back to our Badlands versus Wildtrak video because there's a lot of good info in there if you happen to be cross-shopping those two on the used market. So make sure you check out that video after you're done with this one. Drivability wise, there are a few things. Now there's a few things that I've noticed, and there's a few things that my wife continues to bring up. Now it's always challenging when there's intermittent issues with any vehicle. It doesn't matter the manufacturer, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. If you experience something but the dealer isn't able to duplicate it, you always enter potentially a frustrating conversation and a frustrating event. So I'm assuming we're going to have some of those with what I'm about to share with you guys. The first one is air conditioning. So I've experienced this myself. My wife has experienced this. You can be zipping down the road in the summertime, have the air conditioning going, and then all of a sudden the temperature's just gone. This isn't like going to a stoplight and the auto start is engaging, because that's also when you feel it. Yep. This is going down the highway at 65 miles an hour, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, I'm uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden the air conditioner just kicks back on. So I don't think that's normal. It doesn't make sense to me that it's normal.
That doesn't sound normal.
My wife has experienced it. I've experienced it. I've had someone else in the car that experienced it. So we're not crazy. That is something that has happened. Another thing that has happened is we've noticed some more jerky or clunkiness than what should be expected or normal within the transmission. So sometimes I've experienced it while on a hill. When I want to go from being on a hill, I've noticed a over aggressive shift when I'm coming out of park or shifting from reverse into drive, not on a hill, just to make sure that's clear, not when the pen is loaded. So pay attention to that. And my wife has complained about this for some time, that she's wondering why it feels so jerky. I haven't been able to duplicate it as much. I've been paying attention to the transmission temperatures. So if I do experience something, I'll be able to communicate that to the technicians that at 193 degrees, I've experienced this at this mile per hour. It's always important to try to document that if you can capture as many details as possible when you're experiencing something, to pass that on to a technician. That's what I'm trying to be mindful of as my wife continues to bring it up. I've experienced it, but haven't had that full story to tell. We've had a few different scenarios where we go to hit the gas pedal and it just feels like the power is not there. You push it a little harder, you wait some time, and eventually the power comes, but this isn't the same as that clunking of the transmission I've been talking about. There's a hesitation that's occurring between the pedal input and power delivery. Now, they could be related. It's hard to explain. It's happened intermittently. My wife and I have both experienced it. I've experienced it with her in the cars. There can be a week that goes by where it's like, holy crap, I think the car is going to die. We're going to have a catastrophic failure. And then the next week, everything's perfectly fine, like nothing happened.
We have gone over everything about our ownership experience on this Bronco. I just want to go over a couple of things. If you guys are in the market to purchase one of these used or own one outside of warranty, I wanted to run over a few of these costs for you. That way you just had a brief estimate on what you can be expecting to pay if you were to bring your Bronco to a Ford dealership. The prices I'm about to show you right now are from other people that have had these items replaced on their Ford Broncos. This is kind of an average cost between them, because of course every dealership is going to slightly vary based on labor rates depending on the state and whatever they are in. So here is based on our Bronco, this is what would need to be addressed and fixed when it comes to a cost perspective at 35,000 miles. The oil pan gasket is on average around $1,200 to get replaced. Quite a bit of labor goes into removing that, because you have to take quite a bit of stuff out. The steering rack costs about $3,000 to replace. It's about a $3,000 part when we talk about labor. When you talk about that output seal on the transfer case, it's between $180 and $200. So that one's very, very easy. Now, I know you're bringing up transmission issues, and we are very early into the ownership of this Bronco.
We are.
So I just wanted to talk about what it could potentially cost if that 10-speed transmission were to go out, because this is the same 10-speed you also get in the 2.3 if you don't get the 6-speed manual. 7-speed if you consider the crawl mode, of course. This transmission costs between $5,000 and $7,000 to get replaced.
Yeah, pennies.
So if that were to fail, that's what it would cost outside of warranty. per turbo. There has been some people with turbos that have failed, leaked fluid. It could potentially happen. About $2,600 per turbo.
Let's get those little girls bigger.
Is what it costs to replace the turbos inside of the Ford Bronco. For the Haas 3.0 suspension system, everything has wear and tear. So once those shocks do start to leak, especially if they're not being pushed to their limits, they can potentially have issues because that's what they're designed to do. If they were to fail, it costs about $3,500 in parts for the front and rear shocks, not labor. For the tires, these exact tires go for around $450 to $500 per tire, costing about $2,000 to get 4 tires replaced. And those are just the basic, most likely issues to fail on the Ford Bronco before 100,000 miles.
We're not kidding around.
So I would assume that all of those items you most likely will address in a Ford Bronco before 100,000 miles.
I'm going to say something positive because I almost thought that was a negative little clip there. So I'm going to say something. It was just the reality is what it was. But here's something positive. The resale value of Broncos is very, very close after 5 years to 50%. So that's right up there with the Wrangler. It's right up there with like a Toyota Tacoma. Very good resale value. That means there is a strong desire for these vehicles on the used market. And there's a reason why there's a strong desire for them, because after the 2.5, 3 years that we've owned this, it's still fun. It is super fun. Still enjoyable. Yeah. It has been reliable for us. It has never left us stranded. The items that we have addressed and talked about, take them with a grain of salt because everything can leak, everything can wear out. This isn't a Toyota Camry that's never going to break. There are items that most likely will break on this vehicle and most other vehicles for that matter.
That is very true. So I wouldn't say that the cost of ownership is dramatically different from a Jeep Wrangler. I'd say it's probably very, very similar. Might be a little bit more when we factor in that transmission. However, I think the Jeep is kind of well known for some more engine issues than the Bronco is known for. So I think they kind of even themselves out. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Comment down below your experiences owning a Ford Bronco. And I want to know if the video is helpful for you guys. Did this video give you some insight on Ford Bronco ownership? We just wanted to talk about everything that we have experienced, addressed, ran into, or noticed in our 35,000 miles of ownership. Update video on seeing what the dealership says coming soon. Be sure to hit like and subscribe to support this father-son team. We'll see you guys next time.